All right, I'm going to start as well. All right, we're recording. Hello, this is Pittsburgh Pat with
Ryan Doyle, kicking my camera right away out of the
uh,
gate.
of the Verdigree
Professionalism.
table. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, kick the camera and blow into the microphone. This is
I got a filter.
is an
People love that.
ASMR filter, yes, which is no filter. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, which we've done before, and we'll probably do again. And we're going to talk about our favorite, well, maybe not favorite. I picked um, five tier one magic items and five tier two magic items, and you did the same, I think.
I did the same. I did the same. And it was a challenge because we talked about it quickly and we're like, all right, we're each gonna pick the five best common or uncommon and the five best rare. And like in the process of doing it, I was like, how do you define what the best
Well,
magic items are? Right?
so
Like, am I building a
yeah.
character? Am I a dungeon master? So like I went for the most potential for fun at the table ultimately. And there's some caveats of like, man, this would be good if I was playing a wizard or something.
So I kind of did the same thing. I went with as a dungeon master, what would I give my level one characters? One, so they wouldn't break the game,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
two, so that they could get really creative with it, you know.
Interesting. So I think I also have more than five just in case we have some overlap here because we're doing this live, baby. This is unscripted.
It's like my entire channel is unscripted, so this is perfect. Oh, by the way, I've been watching your walks in the woods, and I really like those. I think those are great. So if anybody
Oh,
from my channel hasn't seen Ryan's go to the verdigris table and watch his walks in the woods with a DM, and I just love that format. It's great.
yeah, it's nice. I'm a big outdoors guy. I don't know if you can see the Appalachian Trail yearbook. Um, but not a lot of that going on right now where we live. Yesterday was a beautiful day. We were just talking before we got on the mic, but it's full winter. We've got a couple hikes in actually, which I've appreciated, but kind of is scary when it's 65 degrees in February. It does make you think a little bit, but
There's been some aberrant weather lately, but fortunately
mhm.
we missed the giant snowstorm that hit the Northeast. So, all
Yes.
right, let's get started with the D&D. And
Boom.
yeah, okay. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Sure, I'll go first
Oh, go for it.
just to get let's see. I want to get it in before you get it in, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I would just start with the bag o' tricks.
Oh, I love bag of tricks.
I love the bag of tricks because I like RNG, like I like half of the homebrew stuff I've made magic item wise is like, yeah, this is pretty good, but it's also kind of wild magic at the same time. And bag of
Because of
tricks
the random element, you mean?
right out of the DMG. Yeah, you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
It's cool because like I think it's one of the only uncommon things where you're actually gonna get a like a companion, something. You're doing a summon, but you could get a lion, you could get a weasel, right?
Yeah, Weasel's
You
always the one that gets the bad rap.
you could pull out a goat. You never are. So let's see if we can make this work.
And try to share the screen.
Yeah. Did I kill it? No, I killed it. It doesn't like it full screen on my side and seeing
Ah,
it on your side is what's going on.
because we're recording, I wonder.
I guess.
So, but the neat thing about the bag of tricks, like you said, is that that you could just like have this amazing like animal, but you don't have to be a druid. That's what I like about it. A rogue can have a bag of tricks. You don't have to be like an animal handler, expert in like nature. It's just, oh, I found this thing and now I'm gonna like just kind of spontaneously use it, see what happens.
Anybody can use it.
Yeah.
Anybody can use it. And I'll even roll like, oh, you found a bag of chicks, roll a d6. Let's figure out what color it is. Because
Oh,
especially if we have
okay.
like experienced players, they know they want the good one, right? It's just like, oh no, gray.
Oh,
Um,
right, right. Because they come in different flavors.
all right, we're going pen and paper here. We're going old school because my setup ain't ain't having it. I can't
Computer ain't
show
working,
you
huh?
what I'm looking at it, but on page, hold please, 154, I want to say,
Hmm.
of the Dungeon Master's Guide. The 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide. We're gonna have to start saying pretty soon, huh?
Yeah. I
Uh,
I that was the first book that I bought. A friend bought the player's handbook, so I bought the DMG, and there was so much more in there. I thought for me, I love the tables and you know the magic items are abundant.
Actually, I made a couple videos about like all the stuff you forgot's in the DMG because everyone just treats it as like the Dungeon Master, the Magic Item Catalog.
Exactly. And you mentioned it, but we should probably hit on it even more. You have a project that you're working on. You have tables. You're actually writing a book.
Yeah, yes, that is most most of what I at least what I think about. That's mostly where my mental energy goes these days. So yeah, those uh tables are built around character backgrounds, which I think are some of the most flavorful and like underutilized aspects of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and I am sure 5.5 or 2024 or whatever we're calling the next thing.
Yeah. One
And
D
so
and
with
D.
one D&D to rule them all, there's going to be there's 50 backgrounds in there. Each of those backgrounds have 10 items, I should say. So there's 500 items.
Wow.
About if it's a D10 table, if you roll a one, you're definitely getting like a more of like a trinket, like a very flavorful trinket, but a trinket
Yeah.
nonetheless. And then
Eh,
sometimes two is also a trinket, but so there's at least what 100 and oh boy, math, 400 magic items, 400 plus magic items, let's call it.
Ooh, that's a lot.
And it's all that's all system neutral. So it's a lot of
Doesn't have to be D&D.
it doesn't have to be D&D, some assembly required if you want, but like a lot of I've gotten very good at constructing system neutral stuff where it's like obvious how this would be in a BX or a 5e, and if you want to change it, you can make it your own. Consult with your
Cool.
dungeon master. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. You guys, are you seeing that?
I see you just fine because you
Uh,
you practiced.
I don't
I was
know. It's
writing a
just
book while you were set
maybe
up.
because I'm the host and you're co-host. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the brooch of shielding is one that I picked. Mostly because like low level characters are squishy. Like if you're let's
Mm,
say you're like a wizard, right? And you got like 8 hit points. And you're somebody like, you come up against a mage who has a magic missiles and decides three of them against you, like you're toast. So like having a brooch or shielding could be a save the day kind of thing for a low level magic user. And the resistance to force damage, I really like that idea because I use I like spells that have force damage. I just
mhm,
like, whirlwinds, things of that nature where like it's an actual it just makes when I describe those to the characters, I can make that tactile description feel like, you know what I mean? They're in the room
mhm.
with the tornado, when they're in the room with the storm. So I really like using that particular class of damage. But
I love differentiating damage types. I wish we did more of it, honestly. We do it in the description side of things. But yeah, force is one of those things that very few creatures or classes have any sort of resistance to at all. So that's definitely useful. And speaking of magic missiles, getting hit with them when you're trying to concentrate on a spell, it's like, okay, yeah, you took Warcaster, you're good at doing this, but now you're doing it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times if I upcast it. Right. So you keep rolling those dice, eventually something's gonna come up and you're gonna drop your whatever. You're holding on to banishment or something. Yeah,
yeah,
so that's a good one out of the gate
that's a really
for
good point.
sure.
And the other thing I like about the brooch is that you don't have to have it in your hand. And I think
Mm,
that's something that I've been trying to, especially as I've been playing characters, I've noticed like, you got a shield in one hand, you want to put your armor class up to 18 or something. You got that
mm,
shield, you got that sword, magic sword, and now it's like, what else? So having
mm-hmm.
something that you can wear is a big one. Plus, it can be a badge of office or it can be like an identifier. So like,
Mm.
look for me. I'll be the one wearing the carnation, Well, I'll be one wearing the brooch of shielding, in the crowd.
That's that's what's up. That is why I took as my next pick.
Mhm.
I took the weapon of warning. One, because it's super useful to have, right? I get advantage on initiative, awesome. I can't be surprised, right? We're camping out in the middle of the wilderness, the orcs are sneaking up on us. This sword is going to let me know it. But not described is how it does so. So you could have this, sword in my brain, but like maybe it's an axe, maybe it's a dagger, right? Because you don't have to be holding it. Again, you just have to, it has to be in your backpack somewhere. And this thing just starts
Right.
shouting at you. So,
Yeah, is it
hey,
Lord
this,
of the Rings where like it glows when danger
mhm,
comes, or is it
mhm.
Scream? Is it a singing sword?
Did I just give you an NPC in your pocket that you're to carry with you wherever you go? So, like,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe this thing is a jerk, right?
Or
Maybe,
yeah, or maybe it's the stereotypical Warner Brothers cartoon lady sees a mouse kind of scream like ah, and then it
mhm.
just it just is so annoying that people are like, why are you still carrying that sword? Well, it saved our lives like five
Mhm.
times, you know.
I like that. It's just like afraid of everything. It's constantly telling you to like run
Yeah,
away from every
yeah. Oh my
fight.
God! Oh my God!
That's
Don't
cool.
go in the current. It's too strong. The current's too strong. Don't do that. Oh, this bridge is too high. Don't.
Yeah, the more ways you can put the fear into them, the better, right? So if you have a paranoid sword, ooh, that's fair. See, it's funny. I almost went the opposite direction. Like the last guy you had, it was level 15, so he thinks you schlubs are the worst,
Ah,
and he's just
right.
constantly busting chops all day.
It's a hand-me-down sword.
Yeah, I mean,
That
someone they didn't make it, right? Somebody had it. It was sitting
that
in the dungeon for 100 years because
that
the last
is.
adventurer dropped it there.
I had not thought of that. That is fantastic. Because it's a magic item. It's very long-lived.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. All right. My next one is the classic bag of holding.
Good one. Yeah.
I mean, I, as a DM, trust my player characters to keep track of things. I don't really want to deal with encumbrance
Hmm.
unless it's a very specific situation. If I'm doing a survival game, like if we're like going through the jungles of Cholt, or something, and there's going to be dehydration, there's going to be fatigue, and I'm trying to get that across. Or if we're in Icewind Dale and they're stuck in the snow or something like that, and they
Hmm.
need to get somewhere and they're carrying all this stuff, but they need to like shed some of it, so they got to decide that kind of thing. But then once you give them a bag of holding, a lot of that stuff goes away. And but also because it has these really cool other things that you can do with it. The
Mm.
classic one is like, well, how long can we breathe inside the bag of holding if we put a person in there, right? Well,
Hmm.
first of all, how are you going to get that person in there? And then, so, okay, well, maybe somebody has like an enlarge reduce kind of thing. So they can make the character small. They put them in the bag of holding. They turn in it's a druid who turns into a mouse and gets underneath the door, and then the bag of holding shrinks with them because it says
Hmm.
all their equipment shrinks. They get in and then it expands again. So that's an old trope. I don't know how often that's been used. I've heard it described many times. I don't know, like get creative with it, so what do you think about the bag of holding?
I love it. And I think I'm trying to think of another magic item that just like switches gameplay, right? Like either you don't have a bag of holding, right? And now you got to worry about feeding the donkey, right? To haul all your stuff around. But I give you this, and we're not tracking encumbrance anymore. And I do think at a lot of tables, in a lot of methods of play in fifth edition in the modern era, at least, like I'm not giving you an accounting problem to figure out how many copper pieces weigh what. Like that's usually not fun because that's not the point of the game.
Yeah.
The way we're playing it right now. So yeah, I give you that, and it just totally one, it takes away all of those questions, right? We're not worried about that amount of bookkeeping. And two, who's holding the bag of holding, right? Now the party has to decide the which player is going to be the bank, essentially. Who's got all the stuff. That person has the bag of holding. And then it becomes, okay, we have six healing potions. And then in the middle of the fight, it's like, well, they're all in the bag of holding. Who has the bag of holding? He's 80 feet away from you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about
Yeah.
it? Because you need
Yeah.
to get to him and then go give it to her. Like,
That's right. So you give it to like the most trustworthy party member. So you give it to the paladin, but he also happens to be the tank. So he's going to go in
hmm
close to the monster, and now your
hmm
ranged guys are getting hit by a mage or something, and now they're like losing hit points. And like you said, it's like, what does he do? Does he try to does he disengage? Does he try to toss the potions? What happens? And are they in glass containers? Now it can get really interesting. Um, you
because
could.
it's yeah, the question of like, okay, how much does everything weigh? Not that fun. Where is the stuff? In the heat of the moment, that's the choke point. That's the decision point where it's like, oh, okay, this that's the part that matters. The canonical answer to how much air is in a bag of holding is 10 minutes worth.
That's
And I
right.
forget, I forget.
But it depends on how many characters you stuff in there, right?
Well, that's an interesting problem.
I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it expands.
I think it's 4 by 4 by 2. It's like not as big as it's not a storage unit, right? Like it's a storage unit in our imagination, but it's like I don't know. It's a tote, right? It's one of those Rubbermaid tote things. It's like two
Right.
feet by like 4 feet by 4 feet, I think is the dimensions of the thing. So like, and I forget, I feel bad. I forget where I read it, but like somewhere there's a bag of holding that you find, and there's a halfling skeleton inside because they pulled that trick and they didn't
It
account
didn't
for the fact
work.
that you had 10 minutes of air or like whatever. The druid had to run away without the bag of holding, and that halfling died in there.
Houdini
So it's
dies with his own water trick because he can't get the handcuffs undone.
hmm
Interesting. Interesting. All
And
right,
then you
next
have the
item.
interdimensional bomb also. We'll
Oh,
just leave that
yes.
hanging
Well,
there.
that I will save for level two because I have yeah, something up that. So we'll cover
Yes.
that.
Up next, I'm going to go with the ever smoking bottle.
Oh, tell me about that.
The ever smoking bottle is you pull the cork and it's a 60-foot radius, boom, obscured.
Whoa.
I don't care if you have dark vision, you're not, it's obscured, right? It's not darkness, it's smoke. And then I plan to have it in front of me, but it expands over time. So the first time they're like, what's in this? Is this a potion? It might ruin their day, right? Especially if it's in the middle of a fight or something. All of a sudden, everyone's like, put the cork back in, you jerk. And it takes a minute to dissipate. So it seems like this isn't useful at all until you come up with a clever way to use it. And you're talking about, I don't know, a heist situation. You're talking
Hmm.
about, all right, the druid can turn into a snake and has blind sight and whatever. I have blind fighting. Like there's ways to use it to your advantage, but it requires not only strategy for like the one turn where it gets activated, but it actually takes like party synergy because it could be awesome, but you could also be ruining everybody else's turn by taking away their ability to see, essentially. So it's the kind of thing you have to think about. And it's the kind of thing where it's not just like, ooh, numbers go up. It's like, okay, you have to be strategic about this. You're going to be clever and make decisions. And then when that pays off, it's not just like the dice giving it to you or like, oh, I rolled a 12 instead of an 8. It's like, okay, we did what we set out to do. And that's always the good stuff for me. And there's a million clever ways to do it, right? You
Yeah, I
open
mean
it up in
it's
a open it up in a crowded tavern and yell fire, right? And now you got the place to yourselves. There's all sorts of useful, tricksy ways to use it.
yeah, tricksy. I like that. I think the thing with controlling the battlefield is a big
Mm,
deal, right? So like, you've got like a rogue who's in a forward position and remaining crouched behind a bush or whatever. The caravan that they're going to rob or detain is going to, like, let's say like a Robin Hood scenario. They're gonna rob the sheriff of Nottingham, right? And he's proceeding up the road, and so you have a forward scout who waits until the party is, there's a separation, like the lead group, like of the vanguard, let's say. There's a small division between them and the main party, and so you can like wait until the opportune moment to obscure the area between the soldiers in the front, who can then be like handled, isolated, handled. And you could even do like the old switch costumes kind of thing, and like pull
mm,
them off their
mm.
horses, take their costumes, detain them, and then jump on the horses, and then at a later time you can ride into the castle with the sheriff and surprise King John or something like that. So it's yeah, there's so many different kinds of ideas. But even on the open battlefield, just like making funneling people into a certain area, like you're trying to get the enemies into a group so that the wizard can cast
Mm.
fireball or something of that nature. So you make the escape routes less appealing and just naturally difficult to negotiate.
And when you're thinking in those terms, you start to see the whole situation. You're not just sitting waiting for your turn. Like you're watching every other move be it the enemies or your allies. You're engaged. It's just ups engagement the whole time when you're trying to control the battlefield like that.
Yeah,
It's
and it gives opportunity for people to have those kinds of special skills, like like spike growth and things of that
mm,
nature, where they can like interact, and they're all doing it. And I think that's the sort of play that I like to encourage, where the party feels like a party and not just
mhm,
like, oh, it's the rogue's turn, oh, it's the ranger's turn, he's going to shoot his
mhm.
bow, oh, it's this. No, 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 it's everybody's involved in the plan and everybody has a part to play, and then the party feels like a party. So when they get their victory, it's a communal victory.
Exactly. It's not just who gets the last hit on the guy.
Yeah, which happens so often. In fact, I had a character who came in second a couple times in Adventure League, and so I just made that his thing. Like he's
Mhm.
always been trying to vindicate himself because he's been seen as a folk hero. Like, but the guy who he supposedly killed in battle fell on top of his sword accidentally. And so he was like, holding the sword when discovered, and they're like, "Oh my God, you killed like the colonel, of the enemy." And he's like lauded and feted, and he's like, no, 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 okay. And then he goes along with it, but then he feels like a fraud. So now, ever since, he's trying to vindicate himself by doing something valorous in battle, because he really didn't the first time, but he's been getting credit for it for all these years.
That's interesting. And it's somewhere out there, there's a player character who's done a ton of damage, but has technically never killed anyone. And that's yeah. How do they feel about that? Do they
Yeah.
like is that a justification for them? Or are they like sheepish about it? Or yeah, they're just the assist master.
Yeah, or are they like, is it part of their conscientiousness? Like they're like, well,
Hmm.
I will do damage, but I won't kill. Like, are they
Hmm.
like the monk, that like,
Hmm.
well, somebody else has to do that. It's out of my hands. I can't take a life. That would be an
Hmm.
interesting oath, actually, for a paladin or something of that
Yeah,
nature.
just everything is non-lethal. And then if I knock the guy out and someone else gets to him, yeah,
That's not my problem.
not my problem, not my
So it's
preference,
like
but
questionable morals, like living to the letter of the law, not the actual. All right, let's try this one. The Horn of Silent Alarm.
oh.
So I thought I had a picture. I guess not. Yeah, so I really like this, especially when you read the description. So you use it 4 times a day, but only one creature or party member of your choice can hear the alarm, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so you're like blowing this horn and nobody else can hear it. And I just thought, how comical would that be? Like, like you're actually like, oops, I was gonna double share. That's like a bag of holding thing. Don't do that. Yeah, so how cool would it be? Like here's Patrick over here going in this giant, like, Viking horn kind of thing,
Hmm.
hollowed out horn
Hmm.
thing. And everybody's going, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Meanwhile, 600 feet away, your familiar or your buddy or whatever is like getting the signal, like right now, now's the time. So,
And that also, yeah, that opens up other ways of playing and strategizing because communication is huge. You split the party. How do you talk? No one's got message, or they're out of the range, or I don't want to burn a slot for sending or something. So
yeah,
beyond the cartoonish quality of it all, which I'm a big fan of.
think of the possibility for a heist, right? Okay,
Right.
so like, you got somebody who's in like a Trojan horse kind of situation. They're being
Mm.
carried in with the loot. They're inside the vault. They're going to break, the lock from the inside, or they're going to open the door somehow. And you need to know when the party needs to let them know when they're ready, or vice versa. So maybe you
Mm.
have two silent horns. You have one on the guy inside and one on the party outside, and then you can like send
So
a signal.
you got a halfling in the bag of holding, which goes into the vault. When he hears the horn, he pops out because you got 10 minutes. You got to do it quickly. Blow the horn. He pops out with the ever smoking bottle. He opens that bad boy up, and all of a sudden, it seems like the vault's on fire, and that's the
Yes.
that's the fastest way to get that door open, right?
Yeah, that's
Boom.
right. especially if it's paper currency.
Yeah.
Speaking of currency, you were mentioning copper pieces. This isn't a magic item, but I thought it was really clever. I was talking to somebody online. They didn't have any weapons to against were creatures like werewolves, were tigers, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
They didn't have any silver weapons, so they
Mm-hmm.
used silver pieces in a slingshot or a
Mm-hmm.
sling. And so now they always carry like rolls of dimes with them, like into battle ever since that one encounter. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
boy, that's a really clever idea.
It's not bad, man. Sock full of quarters is a thing.
That's right. It could hurt.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, what did you I would give him a D4, right? D4 plus strength, what improvised weapon? What would you do?
Yeah, at least you got a projectile that's going to do some damage. I
Mm-hmm. At
mean, I think
least get
that's
his
probably what I
attention.
would do. Yeah. Well, you'd have to just it'd be death by 1,000 cuts or a
Mm-hmm.
thousand dimes. All right, I think it's your turn.
Um, I'm gonna go with alchemy chug. I went back and forth,
Mhm.
because it's something that like people are like, oh, and then they forget they have it. But if you think about it, what can you do? I got it in front of me. It makes, I think it's 10 gallons. Oh, and 8 gallons of fresh or 12 gallons of salt water.
Mm.
So right away it's like create water, but two, it can pump out acid. It can pump out poison, right? Everyone's like, oh, it makes beer. I have an infinite supply of beer. Awesome. Funny. But like you start collecting, I don't know, using the honey to make things sticky or just to sell them. But like, yeah, oil, super useful. Acid, poison, super useful things. And if you have an infinite supply of them, now you're starting to, this thing coats every arrow that you shoot in poison if you take the time to set yourself up right.
Hmm.
Um, and then
So,
also just like an absurd amount of mayonnaise, right? What is the yeah, 2 gallons of mayonnaise, which makes me a little queasy. But yeah, if somebody came
if
up
you
with a
have
use
the
for that.
chef feat, then that could come in handy.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I think when you mentioned back to back poison and honey, it reminded me of something. I think it's in Suetonius. It might be in Livy. It's the army, the Roman army apparently came into camp that had been abandoned by the German. The I guess it was the Arminius, his tribe. I forget what the name of the tribe was, but they were in Germania, and there was all this honey there, right? Well, the honey had been made by bees who had I think it was hemlock. I think it was
Mm.
they had made it from hemlock flower, so it was poisonous. So the Romans found this like abandoned camp with a bunch of different food supplies. The honey was in there as well, and the Germans basically used poison to incapacitate much of the legion. So then that's based on like an historical source. I don't know how true it is, but interesting. So you could play something that way too with
And
the alchemy
those are
jar.
the those are the stories that get told 2,000 years later, right? Like, I don't know. There was one Visigoth with a big axe, right? And he did a lot of damage, but like, yeah, they were clever enough to poison the honey and leave it behind, and literally they honey trapped us.
Yeah, literally the honey trap. Yeah.
Um,
I think that,
mm,
it's interesting for me that I think that's why I read history so much. The I love fiction. I was a fiction writing major, but I also had a minor in history. And if I went on for my graduate stuff, I probably would have gone for history because there's so many good stories and it's hard to like make these things up. Although I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there were historians at the time who took license with some of it to exaggerate, and some are more reliable than others. But even if there's a kernel of truth in that, it says a lot about the Romans and being able. One of the things I like about the Romans is they in general it seems like they're willing to admit their defeats, and that makes for a story because then they're the underdog when they do win, right?
hmm. Hmm.
If you're just like, oh, we win every time, ha ha ha, ha, that story gets boring after a while. And the same with D&D. Like, if you let
Hmm.
your characters get away with murder untouched, no damage taken, like they're gonna get bored with your campaigns after a while.
Yes, I was just having this conversation yesterday, actually. Yeah, I don't play video games on like God mode, right? Like I'm not looking to make my AC 30 so nothing can ever touch me. Like that's fun for a session. but not for a campaign, right? Like there's no stakes. Nothing matters anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why like my first choice was not like right now my tier one players finally just got enough gold to go shopping for magic items, and like the wizard wants the band of intellect, the barbarian wants gauntlets of ogre strength, and like can't blame them. I want my main stat up as high as I can get it for free, yeah, or not for free, but without investing my ability scores. I'm a wizard who dumped int because I got a magic item. Like I see the appeal of it, but like give me the ever smoking bottle, right? Give me the
that's
alchemy jug, give me the weird stuff.
I see. I would let my wizard do that, but then I would find a way to take the headband away. I would find a moment where it's like, okay, you want to be stupid? You're stupid now. Now you have an int of
Mhm.
6, and
Mhm.
now you're gonna have to deal with it. So what do you do? You know? And it could be so fun because I love when I make my characters personally, I like having a dump stat because I want that. I want
Mhm.
like the really like not so smart but highly charismatic character, because that's fun. Like he just walks into danger and he's just not real smart about it, but he thinks he can charm his way out. And it's great when it doesn't work. It's fun when it
Mhm.
does, but it's great when it doesn't work because then you have to do something else. You have to come up with something. And that's
Right.
when you really dig deep into the character.
I think a lot of early career players are trying to win, and you don't. And this is not a game that you win, right? And that's why some early DMs are like taking away the lose conditions, right? Because they don't like they're thinking in terms of winning and losing, but it's stories, right? It's the poisoned honey. It's not the 30 AC and the 1,000 points of damage. It's the you don't. I mean, people are built different, so someone's going to remember that time that you remember that you crit. You don't remember that it was 42 and not 38 or whatever the number was, right? Like
Mm.
you remember the emotional impact. And like again, maybe someone is more mathematically minded than I am out there, and they're getting that thrill from it. Um, but yeah, when the bottle of smoke shifts the tide of battle, that's the part that I'm going to be thinking about
Years later,
when I'm trying to
decades,
fall asleep. Yeah.
decades later. Absolutely. Yeah. Is it my turn?
I think so. We went off into the weeds there a little bit, but I think yeah, the honey. Yes, I did the alchemy jug. You're up.
This could break a game. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, that was the Horn Asylum alarm. There's the picture
Go
if
on.
anybody wants. But it's
Go
the
on.
broom of flying. So I think
Mm-hmm.
you have to be careful whenever you give your characters a chance to fly,
Mm-hmm.
because then the battlefield becomes three-dimensional. It becomes much more dynamic. Travel becomes easier, that sort of thing. But uh, I mean, what's the first magical creature that I think I ever remember, right? A
Mm-hmm.
witch on a broom, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something supernatural, something that you can't do in everyday life. So maybe it's a Quidditch tournament. Maybe it's a Harry Potter kind of thing. Maybe it's situational. Yeah, you can have a broom, but you don't have it forever. You have it for like a particular module, and then for some reason it gets taken away. So maybe you make the broom have charges.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's an old broom that's falling apart and is ready to be retired, but you're not sure how much longer you can fly it. So as a DM, you can have conditions on these things. They don't have to be, RAW. It doesn't have to be rules as written. You can modify these things and should, I think, because you don't want it to be broken. You don't want all of a sudden to have one character who can do something that none of the other characters can do and always does it and wins the kill shot every time and just outstages everyone. You want it to be well, I want it to be a party atmosphere. Now, if you're playing one on one, like if it's a game of one where it's a DM and a player, absolutely knock yourself out. I give them, but if it's more than two people at the table,
And that's game balance is important for that very reason, right? It's not just like I can do anything on my side with the monsters, right? Like I can balance the game right away. It's much harder for me to balance the game on the other side of the table. You got 5 players and somebody's min-maxing and can fly, right? And someone else has a 25-foot walking speed. Like there's an inequity there right away. I like the broom of flying for sure. I don't think it should be uncommon because it totally changes the game. But for a dungeon master out there who has handed one out and is sad about it now and is thinking about how to take it away. Um, Ceilings, the dungeon, right? Half of your
Yeah,
adventuring,
yeah.
but what someone in my, it's a higher level. They're what are they? They're level 7, level 8 now. But someone has a broom of flying in my other campaign, and how high are the ceilings gets asked every session,
Every time, yeah.
every session. And yeah, it's interesting. The other thing that I was thinking of when you were saying the witch being the most iconic, magical creature early on in like childhood fantasy, um, most of the time in most adventures, the players are finding a magic item in a dusty treasure chest somewhere buried in a corner, hidden behind a secret door. But like, why is it not in the hands of a goblin or something, right? There's monsters that live in here. They would have found it, and they're going to use it against the party
Heck yeah.
before the party gets their hands on it. So this wizard's pretty tough. This wizard that's flying around is way tougher.
Yeah.
And now I've earned that broom.
Yeah, I want that, right? You
hmm
see that, you see him attacking your buddies, and you're like, I want that. I'm gonna knock that guy down. Yeah. Focus on the flyer.
And especially with these like weird things, right? Or like not necessarily like clearly tactical things out of the gate, right? Like the alchemy jug, or like where the hell did they get 2 gallons of mayonnaise, right? Where like
And if
what
they're
just
using it in
happened?
a weird way, like if they're using
Mhm.
it to like grease the path to make difficult
Exactly.
terrain or
That's
something.
cobalt stuff in my head canon, right?
Right,
Like,
because they don't know what that is. Like they're like, oh, what is this? And then they just
right.
like smear it on the ground so that, some they hope the adventurers will slip.
And then you get like swarmed with vermin because you're covered in mayonnaise. So like, like yeah, you can think
Flies.
of yeah, ooh, gross.
Yeah, well, yeah, but like if you have a creature that's impervious to smell or doesn't think bad smells are bad, they don't care, right?
Oh my God, it's fresh. It's always fresh mayonnaise in my mind. Yeah, you leave that out in the sun for a couple of days. It's a biological weapon, man. It's a whole other
It's a
thing.
place nobody
I
wants to
did
go.
see that it's just it builds. There's so many different ways to use it. The more you think about it, the more weird and wild you get with it.
So
Um,
yeah, that's why I wanted to do this video because it's so much fun to bounce ideas off each other. It snowballs.
right,
You
right.
got what's your number five?
Well, so speaking of breaking the game, the deck of illusions
Oh yeah.
is an uncommon magic item, and it is not going to break your game. But if you find a deck of cards, the players are going to be super excited and super terrified. If they have any knowledge of D&D canon, like if I show you a deck of cards, you think it's a deck of many things right away. They just wrote
Right.
another book about it, right? So you have to pull one to see what it is, right? Unless you take it to the wizard and identify it or something like.
Mm.
So someone's taken that risk, and okay, the game's not over, but now and there's that moment of like a, a beholder pops out. It's like what and okay, it's illusionary. And it's also that RNG, like you don't know what you're getting until you pull it. It's one of the few things where like you literally use a deck of cards, so there's like a prop involved. It's just yeah, it's a fun one. And now it's a question of all the creative ways you can use an illusory monster to whatever, get up to hijinks and control the battlefield.
So do you do that? Do you bring like props to the table?
Sometimes it's funny at my I got used to playing online. At my in-game or in-person game at Game Masters. Hold on, I'm mirrored. Uh,
Oh, you have a Game
where I
Master
could
shirt.
I have a Game
Cool.
Master
I don't
shirt,
have
which
one yet. I have to get one.
I saw it at PGX, and I didn't
Oh, okay.
realize. So for those who are not in the know, Game Masters is both of our friendly neighborhood local game shop.
Yeah, I'm going there tonight.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice. And I have a couple players who are into 3D printing and minis and stuff. So like I am using the most minis I've ever used, and none of them are mine, which
Mm.
is interesting and fun. It adds like a different element. Once in a while, I had healing potions that I brought out. But yeah, the deck of cards is about as advanced as I get. And I roll in the open. I guess that's my prop is dice always. Like the dice are always out in front of the players. They see what's happening. I don't use a screen. So like everybody sees if I crit on you, sorry. But
Yeah.
we're all gonna know the instant it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a I we used to have a pottery studio, my wife and and I used
Oh,
to try to make like potion
oh.
bottle shapes. So like this was one of my early attempts. And this is on my table. The fact that you mentioned that was pretty wild. But yeah, I kept wanted to make one that was like a flask of oil, right? So I just always imagined it being like a ceramic jar with like
Mhm.
a, cloth stuffed in it, like a Molotov cocktail kind of thing
Mm,
you throw, right? And then you want to make it thin so that it breaks, right, on impact and
hmm.
has that splatter effect. So I went through that phase where I was trying to make different shapes like that. But I love using props. So like I've even gone so far as to like look up like the goblin written language and write like things in a notebook in
Mm,
goblin or
mhm.
draconic. Like the other day, actually, this isn't a visual thing, this is a phonetic thing, but or a voice thing. But I've been taking Latin on Duolingo. So I had ran an adventure with a red dragon. And so at one point I said something like Corina domi dormit. And people were like, oh my God, what the hell? And I was
Draconic is
like,
Latin. I think
yeah.
also maybe Abyssal is Latin.
Oh, Abyssal is definitely Latin, and I did have an Abyssal character as well, and we needed to find out its true name, the demon's true name. So I did something in Latin with that as well. But
Yeah,
then they said afterwards, what did that mean? And I said it meant Corina sleeps at home. But when you say it like in character,
oh,
oh,
sure. Oh,
Corina
sure.
dormit, it sounds like a red dragon, and yeah, they don't know. I mean, most people don't know Latin, so but I think pulling those kinds of elements into the game, something physical, like something they can like writing on a piece of cloth.
Hmm.
Take your old t-shirt that you were gonna like throw away or and cut a little piece out and write on it because goblins wouldn't have paper, right?
Hmm.
But they might
Hmm.
have some cloth, right? And they would probably
Hmm.
write on that. So, like, just like a one word phrase, maybe it's the password that opens the door. Maybe it's a clue to the password. Maybe you give them a fragment. Uh, these kinds of things. I have players who have said like later that that's what they remembered the most was, oh, I remember when you gave me that piece of thing and I still have it, and I
Hmm.
always let them keep it too. Like they just keep it if they
Yeah, it's
want it.
funny. Handouts are a different thing in my head, right? Like if I can print it and like tea stain it or something, like that's not a, but that's 100% a prop. Because like, yeah, huge fan of handouts, right? Like
Mhm.
this is what the letter says that you discover on the desk. You're not going to retain
Mhm.
that the same way as like this is the letter.
This
It's like
is the
whoa,
letter.
like and you have it, and like it's visceral and it's immersive, and you have it next session. You know what's on that letter because you have that letter.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of the goblins. Like the missive is on some like nondescript hide. Like this was something skin. You don't know what. Like make a nature check. Nope, you
Right.
don't. Could be anything.
Yeah, it was
For
tanned and
anybody.
cured, and you don't know what it was. Could be
Hmm.
human, could be
Hmm.
elf, you could be anything.
Hmm.
Yeah, could be a
Hmm.
deer. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Because in the
Should we
grand
go
scheme of
to
things. Oh,
should we go to tier two?
sure. Yeah, that was 10.
Yep, that was
Upgrade.
fast. Do you want to start?
Sure. This one is both, right? Once you get into tier two, it's hard to like, this is just for fun. Like, no, we're getting to powerful stuff right away. But this is like, I would want it on my character, regardless of who the character was. And I'm happy handing it out as a dungeon master because there's a lot of potential for creativity here. The Ring of Spell Storing.
Oh, yeah.
It's one, I can hand it to you with spells on it, right? It's got some summon elemental spell or who knows what, something you don't have access to yet. Um, but two, if we're smart and we plan, it creates this strategic teamwork aspect of things where like the wizard can give the rogue fireball because the rogue can get in there and get out, or we can pump the barbarian full of healing spells all of a sudden. Now the
Yep.
barbarian has 5 charges to cure wounds, so there's a lot of potential ways to use it.
Yeah, I mean it's that's an amazing idea. I'd never even considered the cure, the curing spells with a heavy, like that makes perfect sense. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think what I like, oh, what was it? Oh, when you mentioned something that you would give the characters or keep yourself. So this is something I just found out, and I don't know how. But being an Adventure League dungeon master, and for those in the don't know what Adventure League is, it's kind of D&D organized play, and people volunteer to be dungeon masters, and you can walk in with the character that you've already had created or without one, and just make one on the spot and just have like a one session game. So you if you just want to taste D&D, you can walk in, or if
Hmm.
you're, don't have the time commitment for a campaign, you can
Mm.
go when you want, and then like maybe you don't go for 2 months and then you can go again, like that kind of thing. But the one of the incentives for people to volunteer their time and study modules and adhere to the rules of Adventure League, which, homebrew is always more fun because you can do whatever you want, but Adventure League does have rules, is that if you when you pass out that magic item at the end of the game, usually there's a special item that's associated with each of the tiers and each of the adventures. As a DM, you can use your service time instead of collecting that for like some other bonus. You can take the one that you gave out. So
Mm.
it gives the DM incentive to give out some pretty cool stuff. So like the other day I had a tier 3, and these guys got like a +3 pike. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I had that.
Mm.
Later, I'm reading the Adventure League rewards thing, and there's a lot of cool rewards. And then at the very bottom, it said, you can give away your service hours for this adventure that you just ran if you want that item. And I was like, oh, I have a character that wants that item.
Yes, please.
+3? But it was a really tough adventure. They actually were in Chult, and they met the adventure as written has a red dragon and a Baylor. And so
Mm.
it's a tough adventure. And then the way I rewrote it, the prologue, I said, we're on Chult. We got to have dinosaurs. So I gave him some dinosaurs, especially
Yeah.
the druid appreciated that because now he's like, I'm studying this dinosaur. I'm like, I'll bet you are.
Mm.
And then I'm in the parking lot afterwards, and my friend says, "Oh, you ran D&D. You had Dungeons, Devils, and Dragons." And I was like, "Wow, I didn't think of that. But that's awesome. I'm
And
using it."
dinosaurs. And dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. That's what I meant. Yeah, yeah. D&D. So that was kind of fun.
Bring your own D's.
All right, let's see what I got next.
What you got?
Let's share the screen. We had Broom of Flying, and now we got Boots of Speed.
Mm.
Boots of Speed I like because after a while, you mentioned earlier the guy who has 25 feet of movement, and eventually, like, you got that heavy that just can't quite make it into battle on time.
Hmm.
It's either his initiative is low, or he's a barbarian, but like, he doesn't have great dex, so his initiative score, he never rolls, and you need him in the battle. Like, you don't want him to, you get, as a DM, like, you want to see everybody do their stuff. So you don't
Hmm.
want somebody sitting out, especially if you have like 6 or 7 people at the table. By the time that barbarian makes his movement and then, does the thing he wants to do, everybody else has already had a turn and he hasn't had an attack yet because he
Hmm.
had to like double his speed and do dash. So this makes it, I think at level, by the time tier 2 rolls around, I want to do away with that. I want everybody to have fun. So I want the barbarian to go in there and get the first smash, and at least in the first round. So I think this helps to alleviate that problem.
And potentially, right, with attacks of opportunity, it's hard to get movements happening during battle, right? It's usually like I enter melee, I stay there
Yeah, you're
until one of us
stuck.
dies.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything that can encourage movement is a good thing, at least on the grid, right? Once we start talking about 3 dimensions and we're flying, season to taste. I honestly, I don't mind, but it's a controversial thing, and some people get themselves into trouble with it. Um, but yeah, anything that can again have you seeing the bigger picture, not just your 5 foot square in the very small amount of time where it's your turn. You can watch what everybody else is doing because you might be going over there next. Yeah, anything that gives you mobility is a great fun addition to the game.
Cool. What's your next one?
Bag of beans, baby. Same,
Oh,
same, same reasons. Same reasons. Freaking anything can happen. It's probably not going to break the game, right? You got to make sure. All right, I got a little like map for a for the Mummy Lord's pyramid that we're all rooting for, or like the Sky Fortress of the giant. But yeah, anything can happen, or it's a little bomb. I forget what it's 5d8 or something. Like I can treat it as a bomb, or we can plant one of these things and see what happens, right? That's peak D&D for me. As long as you're as long as you're ready for it. It's a certain mood. I'm not gonna pull them out in a one shot.
well,
But
the DM has to be ready for it. That's the thing.
mm-hmm,
Like you really have to
mm-hmm,
know your stuff and be able to think on the fly.
mm-hmm,
I think that's the other thing is like I'm a sandbox kind of guy. I'm a sandbox on a railroad kind of guy. Like, you know what
mm-hmm.
I mean? Like I don't want to railroad the players, but there's only so much I can prepare, you
Yes.
know, for a 3 hour session. Like I can't read the entire like tome of, there's so many books now. Like,
Mm-hmm,
but as the more I DM, of course, the more my repertoire is um is becoming, becoming filled out, and the more like things I can pull out of my hat because I say like, oh yeah, I remember when I ran Horde of the Dragon Queen way back in 2014. I forgot about this. I can pull that.
mm-hmm,
I can pull that out.
mm-hmm,
And you get more used to it. And then of course these kinds of conversations, you get all kinds of ideas. And I've been really, really watching my YouTube. There's some really great content out there where people just like run you through like the background. So like I'm doing, I like the Tomb of Annihilation modules right now. So
mm-hmm,
I don't know a lot. I didn't know a lot last week about Chult. Now,
mm.
having a week to have listened to a couple people online, I know a lot about Chult, and I didn't have to sit there and read it all. I could like,
Mm-hmm.
drift off to sleep and let somebody's melodious voice tell me you know, all about it, which is awesome. Which is
Yeah,
what
a lot of
is,
flavor there. A lot of flavor there. It's one of like few regions, right? Because it's all Sword Coast all the time, right? At
yeah.
least in fifth edition. But like Chult is like, oh, this is a different place. This is a different tone. This is a different game. Yeah.
Yeah, literally they talk about spices, they literally talk about, the smell of spices in the marketplace.
Mm.
Is it my turn or
Literal
your
there.
turn?
What did I just do? I did bag of beans
Oh, yes, it's my
because I
turn.
want things to
Okay.
get weird sometimes.
So this is what I came up with. Flame tongue. I
Ooh.
love I one of my favorite, well, I'm a big Star Wars fan. You can see my shirt. So I always want to have a lightsaber. So and I've been taking combat, stage combat. So we've been doing a lot of stuff with like quarterstaff and that sort of thing. And my instructor is always like, this isn't a lightsaber. We are not Jedi. I said, says you. But because what I'm going to do with this after I leave this class is all about swinging my lightsabers, and I have
Mm,
a collection. So the actual flavor of the light is great, but getting an extra 2d6 fire damage, that's not too shabby.
hmm
And I do like that. You can have it in different varieties. So if you are that swashbuckler, you can have your rapier. If you want to be like, that kind of, you know, scimitar wielding guy, you can totally do that too. And if you're a short dude and you got a short sword, no problemo. You can have the gnome have just light up the night. Plus, it's a light source. And I always liked Beric in Game of Thrones. I just
Yes.
loved
Yes.
that character, and it evokes that kind of, like, well, maybe we'll die this time, and it
hmm
gives people an idea of like, and I think that's for me what I do is I start with a character that I like, and then the character evolves, or I mash two characters together. What if Barrick and Luke Skywalker, got together? And then like, what I mean? Like, what if they were two aspects of the same? And then from there, a third character sprouts. And
hmm
so anything I can do to give my player characters uh, a direction, you know. So that's why I picked that.
I mean, it's instant epicness, right? Your sword is on fire. And it kind of implies that there's going to be, like already there's the ice and the lightning version of that in my mind, right? Just like build one of those for each poison type, each damage type of a poison is a good one.
It's a really good
And
one.
when 2d8, I mean, if I'm a fighter, right, and I can action search and I got 4 attacks, now all of a sudden I'm not feeling like I'm not at parity with a wizard anymore, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's funny. I would argue that the Sunblade is the real lightsaber of the
Oh, there you
uh,
go.
of the tier 2 magic items. And yeah, very very similar idea of like it's just a hilt, right? And then this beam of energy comes out of it. It's you're doing radiant damage, but again, that implies there's like the dark Sunblade is out there in the universe somewhere.
I like the idea of radiant damage. Especially if you're going to play if you're going to be like a lawful good character or a good character, and you're going to
Mhm.
be going up against like the baddies down in the abyss, you want to be able to just like, just cut a swath through them, and you're going to get a reputation, right? So like the bad guys are going to be like, oh my God, there's this guy who has a radiant sword. It's like, you got to watch out for this guy. So like maybe, you develop a reputation among the enemy of having that special weapon. It gives you a notoriety. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's one thing to go into the Underdark with like some torches or maybe like a lantern, but like you're bringing the light of the sun with you deep into the earth. Like that right away makes you a very different kind of character.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you
Exactly.
were, wield that against something with sunlight sensitivity or stab it in the chest of a vampire. What does that look like? There's some real interesting moments that come out of that.
Yeah, and some of these big guys that they start to meet at level 2 or tier 2, I should say, which if we didn't explain as levels like 5 through 10, and eventually anyway, is that there's a lot of them that have resistances. Like a lot of them have, some of them have immunities. So like, and radiant is one of the few things that they don't usually, especially like the under dark, like you said, the underdark and the abyss.
Yeah, as far as like zooming out for a second, I think a lot of newer dungeon masters are well, there's two camps, right? There's those who are overeager and hand out a million magic items and then can't figure out how to challenge their players anymore. And then there are people who've done a little homework and have heard those stories and are very reticent to hand out magic items. And if you don't hand out some form of magic weapons to your martial characters at your table, right around level 5, level 6, they're going to start to feel bad because there's going to be a lot of stuff that they can't touch.
They can't hit
So
it.
they can hit it. There's a lot of things that are
Yeah.
either resistant or straight up immune to piercing,
Conventional attacks.
slashing, bludgeoning, and you gotta have a little extra chutzpah. Even if it's a smoking sword, right? It just looks cool. It's not even +1. Like it's magical. Now it ignores those resistances or immunities. Because
Right. Yeah.
your martial classes are going to feel a little less special when the wizard's doing crazy stuff and never seems to be running out of spell slots anymore. So you gotta talking about game balance. It's not about parity with the monsters, it's about parity with everybody else at the table. So everyone's having roughly the same amount of fun. People get different moments to shine, but you don't want it to feel bad to be the barbarian.
I like and this is why I rarely let my players buy magic items, because what I think happens is there's this kind of like with the different classes, there's a kind of a jockeying for position, right? So as they level up, some get stronger than others. So like early on, like the Moon Druid is like invincible, and then like later it's not so much. And then, like a wild shape just doesn't mean as much around level 9. But for the first 5 levels, oh my God. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and it's so everybody gets their turn as the campaign progresses as well. So at right around, like you're saying, like right around level 4 or 5, the barbarian is getting a little bit like less, you know, not as interesting. And then when he finally finds his weapon again, then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, and now it's like, I'm back. And that's a
Yes.
triumphant moment for a character.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this was a little boring, but now I have a lightsaber. I have a flaming battle axe,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, now this feels different and good. And all
Exactly.
those low level things that I was talking about, where you were saying like could really influence battlefield control. those are also going to play into the martial caster dichotomy a little bit too. If the barbarian can, blot out the sun and fight in the darkness, that's going to change the way they feel about things and give them choices to make
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, because at any time they can change the whole flavor of the fight. Yep.
it's not
Yep.
just attack, 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 attack.
That's the truth. All right, I got Cape of the Mountebank.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's on my list.
Well, the reason I like, is it on your list?
Yeah, I mean, my list is more than five because I figured we might have overlap, but I think that's the first. I think that's the first overlap.
That's the first one that I noticed. So the reason that I like it is right off the bat, the smell, right? So it has this faint smell of brimstone. And that's one of the things when, I DM, I like to bring in like as many of the senses as I can. Now,
Mm.
I don't actually like spray scents at the table, although my wife does have a lot of scented oils. I could probably do that.
It's lighting candles.
But one of the things I do is I give out inspiration in the form of hard candy. I do this when I teach kids, especially because
Uh,
I say, look, you have inspiration, which means you can re-roll a die. But if you eat it, you don't have inspiration anymore. Well, inevitably the kids eat it, right? So, but some of the adults do too. And then
Patrick's doing the marshmallow test over here while we're playing D&D.
yeah, we're doing a little psychology here. So yeah, so you can cast Dimension Door. This is great. I mean, like, who doesn't want Dimension Door, right? And
Mm.
then but you can only do it once. And then you gotta wait until dawn, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
And then the effect of like disappearing behind a cloud of smoke, like it's the old magician's trick. Like throw the smoke bomb and poof, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden you're gone, and then you appear in it, and it just I don't know. I just there's so much flavor here, and it looks cool too. It's
That's
red.
perfect. You know exactly what it is. It tells the story right away.
Yeah.
Um, and I really like those like one-time use magic items. Like once a day is the sweet spot. Because if I hand you I made a bunch of one-time use things, and a lot of people will hold on to it until it's no longer as powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a
Um,
hoarder too.
but that once a day thing is like, okay, you're incentivized to use it, but pick your spot, right? Think about it. It's not just you don't have an infinite number of these like one time. Like, do you use it to start the fight at an advantage, or do you hold on to it so you can get out of there if things go
In case things
sideways?
get sketchy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's a straight up like woof, gone. Puff of smoke.
Later.
It's perfect. It's
I am
perfect.
out.
So because it's a once a week thing, it's the only reason I would consider handing out the Horn of the Berserker,
Ooh.
which is all of a sudden there's just a bananas amount of warriors on the field fighting for you. But you got 7 days, which is a campaign half the time, the way 5e plays, right? Like
Right.
you get to use this once almost ever, right? And it's going to feel great when you have, when those 7 days go by in game time. The uh,
So
the
tell
ability to
everybody what it is.
so it's a horn that you blow. Let me read it. I have
Yeah.
it on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
screen, but let me read this one because this I think a lot of people are loath to hand out. But one, it's super flavorful. Again, it's that just like that epic blowing the battle horn is huge. But berserkers come out of this thing. Do 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 do. Oh, is it not even a DMG thing? It's not even a DMG thing. I don't have it in front of me, but you roll. I think it's D6 plus three off the top of my head, and berserkers who have a stat block in the monster manual
So you
come running out,
automatically
and
get four, but you possibly could get
you get a ton.
nine.
You get nine, and they're yours for an hour, and they're on your team. So it's good to shift the tide of battle, but you use it once a week. So when you save it for the boss fight, maybe it changes the state of play, and then you kind of forget you have it for a long time, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, hold on, we have an army, um,
In our pocket.
literally in our pocket. And again, it doesn't have to be sitting in a dusty chest somewhere. The big bad could have this thing. So you walk up on this you want your solo bad guy to live longer. All of a sudden he got smoked. He's down to 10% of his health and he hasn't gone yet or hasn't even given his monologue yet because they snuck up on him. He blows a horn. There's 9 minions around him forming a phalanx.
I love it.
Okay, now this fight is way different. Phase two just kicked in.
And then he
Now we're
walks
gonna
out the
get this
back
thing.
door, right?
Well,
While
that's the
you
other
fight
thing.
his minions. He just saunters out the back like,
Hmm. I'll be
see you,
back.
Mr. Bond.
And even if and it's you take him out and you get this super magic item, you got to wait a week to use it because he just used it too. So there's a little
Mm.
built-in balance there.
Hmm.
So again, a lot of people you don't see it a lot because it's scary. Um, but yeah, there's some interesting ways to use it for sure.
Well, that's great. I love it. I'm going to put that in the hands of my next bad guy. I love that. All right. Speaking of bad guys, and how do you like hold on to them? Dimensional shackles.
Oh, huge, yeah.
So, what do you do? What if my characters last week would have captured the Baylor? What are they going to do? Like this thing can like blink. It can teleport 120 feet
Mm,
away from its position. Not
mm,
if it's got these things on. Nope,
mm-hmm,
can't do
mm-hmm,
it. Now all of a sudden they can take them back to their boss masters at Chult and say, "Oh, you wanted to know the secret name of the demon? Well, here he is. Ask
mm-hmm.
him." And they could be totally bad about that. So yeah, I just like the idea because it's, how else are you gonna like these big bosses? How else are you gonna detain them? Like you can't. Like, it's
And you're not even going to try unless you have that, right?
right.
And now all of a sudden you have a different win condition. It's not just get the guy to zero. Now it's a much more interesting. Can I sneak up and snag him with these?
Exactly. Exactly. So you're on number 10.
10 already.
Yeah,
Jeez.
I know. This went fast.
Ooh, so this is tough. I thought I had two left.
Oh,
I'm good.
maybe did I start?
I
I
don't
forget.
know.
Anyway,
No, I
well,
did.
we can do a bonus one.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna give you the belt of dwarven kind.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome to have, especially if you're not a dwarf, and that is because in my headcanon, the dwarfs bestow it upon their friends. So if you have, it feels like a campaign shaping item to me, where it's like you have done a service to the dwarves, right? You have rid the lonely mountain of Smaug, right? That sort of thing. And like, here is this thing, and you get all of these benefits, but also flavor wise, it's this huge, you get the WWF belt on your
Yes.
waist, and
Yes.
every dwarf knows from a mile away
Yeah.
that you're with them.
Yeah.
And it shapes your character and the story in ways that you get for free or just built in there.
You
And it
walk
can be
into town, you go to the blacksmith. There's a dwarven blacksmith who's grumpy and he's hammering away, and you're like, excuse me, like, get away. Blah, blah, blah. I don't have time for humans right now. Oh,
Mhm.
oh, I have time for you. What
Hmm.
would you like, sir? Like
Hmm.
total change of attitude. Yes, it has panache, it has credibility. You got street cred there. Yeah.
And it's one of, again, I'm always thinking about like where is this thing when you find it, right? And it's like behind the king's throne, like it's sitting there, like like you're working for this thing for 8 sessions, like it's coming, this is yours if you can do this thing. This is like it's a quest reward. It feels like right out of the gate. It's not something you just like find somewhere.
No. And I like that. I think that's important. I think it's best when like with Adventure League, it's best when I give out the reward that fits the campaign.
Mm.
So like it's the weapon of the enemy you defeated, or it's like that. It's like, you did the service to the king and the king gives you something only the king would have.
Hmm.
And yeah, that makes it so much more memorable because then when the characters are using it 3, 4, 5 sessions down the road, they'll have that flashback. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember where I got this," and
Yeah,
then maybe that plays into their, maybe they bring it up.
yeah,
So,
I'm a huge fan of like cohesiveness and
mhm,
just like continuity. Like it's
mhm.
a flaming sword, awesome. A flaming sword because you defeat it, you ripped it out of the dead hand of a Baylor.
Mm.
Feels different, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
earned that sword. It tells a story. It wasn't just like
sure.
it was in a box that I thought it was a mimic and it wasn't, and now I got a sword. You know?
It's yeah, and it's like when Ash, in
Mm.
Army of Darkness like holds up the shotgun and he explains where it comes from, right? You
Hmm.
can buy this at S Smart, Shop Smart, S Smart. You know where he's from, right? So you don't forget, like this is a fantasy world. He's not from there. It further draws the line and it further defines his character because he's describing his weapon,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's so D&D.
Hmm.
It's just so there, and it's effective. It's
Yes.
Sam Raimi, so it's campy, but it's effective storytelling, you know. And I love it. All right, so my final one, I saved the best for last, is the portable hull,
Oh, yes.
because I'm a big fan of Roadrunner Coyote cartoons, and who doesn't want this? And you saw the chaos when he had a bag full of these portable holes, the chaos that happened when this thing would just appear again. One would like drift down, and in the absolute most inopportune moment, like in the middle of the bridge, and he would like be this close to catching the Roadrunner, and down he would go. And as you hinted before, if you have one of these and you have a bag of holding,
Mm.
well, guess what? You have a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
You have an interdimensional bomb.
Welcome
So
to the astral plane, baby.
tell them what happens. Tell the audience what happens when you combine these two magic items.
I say it's up to the dungeon master at the end of the day because it rips a hole through reality, uh, tossing you into the astral sea of some unknown location, which like I don't know. I'll pull up a dreadnought and have him fight it, but I don't know what else I would do in this amorphous dimension of like clouds and thoughts and maybe Mind Flayer Nautilus ships, right?
So
Like,
so what I thought was, okay, here's a way I would use it in a boss fight, right? So the
mm,
portable hole is laying there ahead of time. The boss comes into the room. The boss spots it and maybe is near it, because if he's within 10 feet of it, now you got like, the rogue who's like got invisibility and he's hiding in the seat from the ceiling, and he drops it and it falls into the hole, but he's outside of the 10-foot range. Well, anything
hmm
within 10 feet gets sucked in.
hmm
So now there you go. You just banished the demon into the astral plane, and no way back. It's a one-way trip.
And I love this idea of like, ooh, I just short circuited this entire boss fight, and now we're playing with encumbrance.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Like
And
now,
yeah. But no, the money was in there, you know?
exactly.
Or
You
like
just
Johnny Depp
flew.
in Pirates of the Caribbean. But the rum, woman, the
Yes.
rum,
Yes.
like that kind of thing. So yeah, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Just do it. He does it.
Hmm.
Why did you do that? It
Yep.
could be good gameplay.
Your
So
storage unit is gone.
and now we have a hole in reality. So I don't know if that, is it self-sealing, or no, we have to do something about that.
It's yeah, it's temporary in my mind. It's funny. It's like
Yeah.
a whoop wormhole quick.
Yeah. Like a
Uh
flash.
but then now that's he's in the wind. I love that, right? Like it banished into the astral sea, but like that dragon
But will
could
he come
swoop
back?
back in a few levels with like who
Hmm.
knows what he found over there. You know?
He's got new friends,
He's got new friends in
astral elves.
a couple magic items, which we'll talk about next time.
Yes. Yeah, let's do this again. So we can, there's tons of magic items. We can just go through the DMG and give people ideas on what to do with magic
Mm,
items. But so if anybody's out there watching, you tell us what you want to see next in the comments below. And yeah, we'll do more like this. This is a lot of fun.
heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, have a great day.
All right.
All
Be
right.
kind. Have fun.